Well, as we all know, I think a guardian ad litem can be your best friend or your worst enemy in a litigation case. And acknowledging that and knowing that makes it important to prepare your strategy on how to deal with a guardian in your case, should that guardian make a recommendation that is not favorable to your client. If a guardian ad litem is appointed in your case, the first thing that I recommend you do is prepare a well-worded letter to the guardian ad litem outlining the facts of your case. The guardian appreciates as much factual information as the guardian can receive, including the good and the bad. Now, the next step typically is your client having a meeting or a conference with the guardian ad litem. Your client can't go into that alone. They need to go in prepared, and I'm not suggesting that you as the attorney attend, but you need to prepare your client for that meeting. It's an extremely important meeting, and to send them in without any instruction or direction on how to best communicate their case to the guardian ad litem could be fatal, because that meeting may be the only meeting that your client has with the guardian ad litem. The different elements of preparing your client for the meeting are broken down into 10 components. And the first component is to prepare your client to communicate to the guardian ad litem a history of their relationship with their spouse, because the guardian really starts fresh with your case, wants to know what's going on, what's your client's perspective on the situation, and it would be a good thing for your client to be prepared to discuss in detail, not too much detail, but enough relevant detail regarding the history of their relationship with their spouse, to give the GAL a view of the landscape of this family. The second thing is you want to have your client prepared to communicate to the guardian ad litem what they believe brought their relationship to an end. This will help give the guardian ad litem some insight into your own client's perception as to why that's occurring, and then they can compare that to what perhaps their spouse has to say in response to a question the guardian might be asking them as to what they think. So have them prepared to communicate that in an effective, thoughtful way. And it's always good to do that and prepare your client in advance, because you want to know what they're going to say, and you want to be sure that it's not communicated in such a way that it establishes the message it was all her fault and I was the perfect spouse. You have to maintain your credibility with the GAL, and the best way to do that is to make sure that you have your client communicate what he wants to communicate or she wants to communicate in an even-handed way, but at the same time with enough information and detail to give some insight as to what your client's opinion is of that particular issue. The third thing you want to remind your client of is not to badmouth their spouse. This is not an opportunity to say anything derogatory to the GAL about the other party. The best way to communicate things that are not flattering about your client's spouse is to communicate that in objective details that allow the GAL to reach those conclusions based on non-opinion information. One thing that the GAL might ask is, what do you think the other party is going to say about you, and why they think you, your client, or you, the individual, is a good or bad parent. This allows, of course, your client to do a little self-reflection and also give you information on what you need to prepare for the arguments that are going to be made by the other side, but to also get give the GAL some information or some insight as to how your client approaches or presents these situations. The fifth thing that you want to make sure that you prepare your client for is to be articulate in communicating what their parenting style might be. Because the GAL wants to know what the parenting style is of each of the parents, and some of that's going to be gleaned from the facts and evidence that's presented to them by collateral sources or firsthand witness or home study or whatever the GAL might do. But it's important for the GAL to get your client's firsthand perspective on that particular issue and what they think their parenting style might be. The sixth thing, you want to discuss or identify those family members or individuals that play an important role in the lives of your children or the life of your child as a client. So you want to make sure that your client puts together a list of those people that have frequent and substantive contact with your child, so that you can provide that to the guardian to give the guardian a sense of more about that child and their life and those who are important in their life. So having that list prepared with contact information, addresses, phone numbers, emails, so that you can present that to the guardian ad litem is going to increase the chances that that guardian is going to just pull out that piece of paper and contact those individuals with that information so readily available for them. So that's an important thing to prepare your client for. The seventh item would be, and it's one we all as practitioners want to have our clients prepared for, that if you, as a parent or as your client, make sure that your client knows the routine of their child. What do they do during the day? You want to have your client prepared to be able to explain on a typical Saturday, what does Johnny do? On a typical Tuesday, what does Sarah do? You want to be able to have your client prepared to say, well, this is what the typical routine is. I get her up in the morning and help her dress, and then my wife and I get breakfast ready, et cetera, so forth. That helps give the GAL some insight as to your actual involvement as a client in the life of your child or children. So to have that ready and prepared is going to help the GAL understand how involved your client is in the lives of their children. The eighth thing is to prepare, in addition, and it kind of ties into the sixth thing that I had mentioned before regarding important people in their lives, but also a list of people that you feel, or your client feels, are important for the GAL to speak to in their investigation. Again, preparing a detailed list of who that might be with contact information, which will make it easier for the GAL to actually pursue interviews with those individuals. The ninth thing, which is very important to prepare your client for, is if your child or children have a specific issue, whether it's a health-related issue, whether it's a learning disability, you want to have those people who are important related to that issue to have that contact information and names for the GAL as well as perhaps releases signed and ready to present to the guardian. It helps streamline the process for the guardian in having contact with that doctor or teacher if they've got the contact information and at least your client's signature on a release for the GAL to speak to that particular individual. And I tell clients to contact usually the healthcare providers, particularly with HIPAA and the different privacy restrictions that are in place regarding healthcare providers. My preference is to have clients contact that particular healthcare provider to give them the release that they prefer their patients to sign, and have your client sign that and provide the original to the guardian ad litem, so they have that right there, and it makes it much easier for them to just pick up the phone and make the call. And then finally, it's an opportunity during this meeting with the guardian ad litem to help your client remind the guardian that really the client is interested in making sure that whatever happens, that it's best for the child or children. Just to reaffirm in the mind of the guardian that your client really has a concern about making sure that whatever happens, that it's best for the child, so that the GAL understands that your client's focus is on the right thing and not on a selfish perspective on their particular agenda or approach. So these are some 10 really important points, I think, that in preparing your client for that meeting with the guardian ad litem that you'd want to do in creating or presenting a good interview for them, because that's really oftentimes the guardian ad litem's first perspective on a case, is that interview with your client.